So with all this talk and blah 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 about what we should and shouldn't do, what do you think if we just play some stuff?
Why don't we play something we both worked on?
How about this small independent movie called Dune? So what I've got up right now are the stems, which are I've got dialogue, group ADR, music, sound effects, design, stem of sound effects, and backgrounds. And all of those stems make up the entire mix of what you hear in the theater. Dialogue is just the production dialogue that was shot on the set, and ADR, the looping that when we replace a line.
So it's the main dialogue. It's the thing that you're supposed to be listening to.
Absolutely.
Mostly more than anything else.
Yeah. The group stem is group ADR, where a bunch of actors go in a studio and they become the crowd. Like let's say in Dune, when they're all yelling "Lisana Gaib," they're in the background, they're all chanting and doing things. That's group ADR. So that's a separate stem that we keep separate for a number of reasons. The reason we keep separate stems even is not only are we punching into individual mixes along the way so we can just update one thing and not punch into the whole track every time, is when you do foreign mixes called the M&E, which is music and effects. So I need to make one of my masters at the end is an M&E. So it's a foreign mix. So I take out all the production dialogue. It's all English. And sometimes I keep some of the group. Sometimes I got to take it out because there's English. But the big thing is keeping any sounds that were recorded on the set are production sound effects. Like let's say there's a door close and it's in production. It sounded great. And that's within the mix. I need to keep that. I can't just throw it out, or we'd have to cut a sound effect in there that was different. And they don't want that. They want the integrity of the mix to be what it is that was in the domestic. So we go through this whole process of adding some sounds that were taken out. They're underneath a line, or replacing certain things, adding cloth movement and things. Like is literally someone sits in a studio in a Foley stage and does this and uses cloth to recreate that sound of movement. Like when I move like this and the chair creak and all these sorts of sounds are replaced and added in. Sometimes we don't put them in the final because the production has all of that and we don't need it. Or sometimes it needs support. A lot of the footsteps are redone and they're in Foley. So that there's a whole group of Foley artists, editors, and Doug my partner would be mixing the Foley as well. So all of that is part of the foreign mix. And we have to add those back in that were pulled out when we take the production out. So that's one reason they're separate. Group is people in a studio coming in.
They're actually called the loop group.
Yeah, and they're acting like they're part of the crowd, or maybe there's a call out, somebody shouts from the crowd, those sorts of things. Then there's the music stem, which is pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes there's multiple music stems. There could be a source stem, because there's some song that might be replaced. I mixed this one movie that sat on the shelf after we finished our mix. 6-7 months later, they were like, oh man, that song's not popular anymore. We got to put more popular songs in there. I had to open it back up. And unfortunately, I made a separate stem because we knew this was going to happen. So then I just had to update new songs that were more relevant. And I could keep the score mix. That's one thing. In a musical, you might have vocal stem, the score stem, the backing track stems, all of that separate, because when you get into a foreign, they might redo all of the singing in German, let's say, or Spanish or whatever. So you have to keep all of these things separate. Then what all of these stems crash down into one mix is the final mix that you hear. So I'll be able to solo these out so that you can see what they're like and show you the difference. And then when we play them all together, that's the movie. So here's what we call the rescue scene. It's called Scene 52 in Dune, where they go to the spice crawlers and they're checking them out. And then a worm comes and holy shit, we got to deal with this. The crawler is supposed to be lifted off and that's the story. It doesn't work. And so they got to land and pick up the guys.
It's still 3 short.
We'll find a way.
our escorts throw out their shield generators.
Yes, sir.
Paul, I want you at the back of the Thopter. Guide them in. Delta Ajax Niner, put 7 men each in my ships now. Where are they?
Sir, it's protocol for a reason. We take one step out, they're as good as dead. Besides, we've got a full load of spice. We can't just leave it.
Damn the spice! I want every man off that crawler now!
That was a little bit long, but it illustrates thanks. It illustrates a lot of things in that one scene, which I'd love to talk about. I can solo some stems right now and show you what I mean, but the whole point of that scene is there's so many dynamics and tricks and things that we use to pull that off, and I'll show you what we did and how we did some of them. I love that scene because it has kind of a little of everything in it. It's got great dialogue that's fighting to get through the storm. It has a little whisper from Paul. It's got cool ancient voices spinning around your head, the Kwisatz Haderach and all that stuff, all that design stuff. And then the sound effects speak for themselves. Mark Mangini and Theo Green, Doug Hemphill mixing them, fantastic job. They put together such a great dense track of great material. It was a wealth of things to try and wrangle, which was great, but very difficult because there's so many things to deal with. And our job was to sculpt this and really tell a great story and pull you in and then wow you with certain things and then really bring it down to such a personal level with Paul when he kneels down and he feels spice for the first time. And then it's, oh my God, there's giant worms coming. So the dynamics are just so much fun. Denis is a master of that, of showing you this story that is just such character driven and such grandiose, great things happening all in one scene. So here's just dialogue.
This is Duke Leto Atreides. We're coming down to extract the crew of Delta Ajax Niner.
So he's got a futz on him, is what we call a futz, is crunching him into like a little mic on his radio, and it sounds like in a helicopter kind of thing. One little side note, there are no helicopter sounds in this movie. No recordings of helicopters used. Bug wings, cat purrs, all kinds of weird stuff. You have no idea what's in there. It's amazing.
Shield generators weigh 100 kilos each. Yes, Gurney, have our escorts throw out the shield generators.
Yes, sir.
And Paul, I want you at the back of the Thopter. Guide them in. Delta Ajax Niner, put 7 men each in my ships now.
So if you notice within that scene, we're in a helicopter and I gave it this short little room for the cockpit. I try to play perspectives when I can. You can't go too far with that because you'll lose people, but you'll see throughout the movie, I'm always messing with that. When Paul is in the back of the copter, I give him a little more space. When the Duke is talking to his son, he gives a little bit more room and he's a little further away. And then we jump back to him and you get a closer mic perspective. So there's a lot of little subtle things like that. If you catch it, great. If not, I hope it gives you a feel that maybe you didn't notice. but you feel it. And there's a lot of other scenes like that where the Baron.
You have a wonderful pixie cousin.
When he's in a distance at the table and he's eating, it's all disgusting, and he's eating all this food and slurping. He's very far away, and then when we come up on him, he's big and full and menacing. And I do that with all sorts of the EQ, compression, all these tricks, reverbs, whatnot. But it's all about like choosing the right mic, choosing the perspective, getting that to feel like you're in the movie and it feels real. So here's some group ADR. It's all those guys in the background yelling and they say, look out, all that. On top is Paul.
You go to Atmos here.
Hey! Hey!
Well, because it got bigger and you wanted to fill it out a little bit.
Yeah. So the point when Paul's yelling, the storm is so loud that you don't want him to be super clear and up front. You want him to fight through the sandstorm. If I made him super clear and we carved everything out, you'd be like, wow, that sounds like he's on a set. So you try to get him within the atmosphere of what he's doing. He's fighting through a storm. If you were yelling in a storm like that, no one could hear you, even if you screamed, right? So we're trying to get that little, audience perspective of him fighting through this big storm and yelling at his guys like, hurry up, let's get the hell out of here. And then, of course, music stem. Now that was me yanking the score big time because that was not Alan. That big ham-fisted move was mine. But I did it on purpose because that big cloud comes over and goes wow, like that and envelops Paul, and I yank the score down. What it does is pulls the rug out from you. If you're an audience member, you're like, what happened? And then you're stuck inside Paul's head for a moment, and it's like, wow, what is he thinking and feeling at that moment? All done on purpose. Actually, before that, when the worm comes out,
Yeah, that's a good one.
I purposely let the sound effects do the big burst right here, and then pull the score out of that and let it grow big time after this. If I run over that, you don't get the power of this giant worm. You have to illustrate that with sound effects. You can't just say, okay, here's the brass. It sounds great. It's really cool. But you got to play, a massive worm bursting through the sound, and that's the whole point of the scene. So it's a delicate balance, and I pulled back more in the theater with that and waited for a second and then come up on it, and you'll hear it right here. So I'm catching the theme. And I'm also filling up the audience at that point, and then it drops down and cuts off with the dynamics of Paul in his head. This part stays very dreamy, and we're in Paul's head, and you start to hear all the dialogue work here, which I'll solo that for a second. It gets into all of the Cuisart's Hatterack and the delays and whatnot. So within that are layers and layers of these, what we call ancient voices of actors and actresses, mainly actresses because they're Bene Gesserit, they're women, and gravelly voices and things like that. And we designed them that they would be spinning around the room. If you're on 2 channels at home and you can't hear that, go to a theater. But you'll hear it spinning around in Atmos, moving constantly in his head, and it's like kind of freaking him out like a drug state with the spice. That was the whole point. The layers of ancient voices is that he's being awoken into this Kwisatz Haderach is like the Messiah kind of. So we're using those voices to illustrate that he's drawing on, hundreds and hundreds of years of these Bene Gesserit monks, or actually they're women, but that cult or whatever you want to call them are, coming up and showing him, awakening him to what his true self is Kwisatz Haderach. So at the end, I pull out the one that's Jean Gilpin. She's an awesome actress, and she had the best voice, and we used her a lot in these ancient voices. And it's very murky and spinning around, and it gets to the end, and it really pulls out. And I really wanted you to hear Kwisatz Haderach. So that's the one that comes through cleanly at the end above everything else in the mix, and then it smacks you into the next part of the scene. Then there's, we can show you sound effects. Within that big sound of the worm busting through, they used all kinds of cool stuff from, obviously sand, but they use wave crashes and some thunder and gravelly stuff, all kinds of things. They sunk mics into the sand and created avalanches of sand and had the mics below the sand, getting these sand groans and this movement. Really cool stuff. They went out in the desert and recorded all these sorts of things. And then they had in the design stem are the ornithopters. So you hear that cool at the end? That was my partner Doug doing a very cool thing with a tone sweep with an EQ, which you probably heard in lots of songs and whatnot, because that's kind of a cool trick to do. He did it with a sandstorm. He took the whole thing and EQ and like that, like bending his EQ and making it very narrow and sweeping it. So it's a tone sweep that moves you across, and then he pulled a fader and did that at the same time, and it was magic. It's like, don't touch that. It was awesome. So we kept that throughout the whole process, and everyone loved that one. Very creative guy, that Doug Hemphill. Here's some backgrounds. He's very subtle in this scene because there's so much going on. He pulled a lot of levels down and didn't need a whole lot. There's some earlier, more of the wind and the sand.
So backgrounds are sort of less specific to the scene. They're the space, the ambience around the scene that isn't the main thing, or the main effects. It's the sort of the vibe, the space around it.
Yeah, it's really the glue and
Right.
the thing that puts you in the atmosphere. In this case, it's a sandstorm, but it could be crickets, it could
Right.
be thunder, it could be
Amazingly valuable in animation, because in animation there is no reality, so everything is bone dry.
yeah.
So you have
basically.
you got to spend a bunch of time building proper ambience into scenes, otherwise it just sounds super fake.
Yeah, because everything's looped. It's like
Right.
there's no production.
Literally, there's no production.
There's no movement. There's no anything. So we have to recreate all of that in animated films. So all of those elements make up the mix that you heard on the first pass, and I hopefully that explains how we split things out and why. There is one thing I'd like to play from Reel 3, something that I was able to do that did not expect, but at one point there's this one cue in the film that Denis wanted to try. Theo Green had written some of it, and it's like, oh, I've got this cue, and then he came to me and said, hey, can you help me out and record some other things with this to kind of build it up and fill it out, and then if you could mix it on the stage, that'd be great, and it'd be a better presentation.
So Theo Green is what we call a multi-hyphenate. He's a composer, sound designer, Renaissance man.
He can do it all. He's very talented and a really good composer. So he had this cue that was in the temp dub. It was in the temp mix, and we had it in there for quite a while. And then, of course, Hans came and redid the whole score. But there was something cool about this one that Denis was kind of on the fence and wanted to try and see. So I came home. I listened to Theo. I says, I got you. I know what you want. Recorded these drums. I recorded me doing kind of a Tuvan chant, like a oh, like that, like really deep and low. And I multi-tracked myself, put me all around. And then I have a lot of flutes, shakuhachi's, a Belgian double chamber flute, from Bali. I played all these flutes and layered them in there, took them back to Theo. He cut a lot of the flutes and moved them around and pitched some stuff. And he had a singer and some other stuff. I have some chimes in there. So we created this whole cue, and it ended up in the movie, which I was really happy about. I'll just play a little bit of it and so you can see what was going on in there.